good to see all of you tonight. Thank you for being here once again to worship God together. Kind of going off what Jason was talking about this morning, especially in his intro, we've reached December. And you know what that means? That means you will be busy until the end of January 1st, right? At least for me, that's the way I think about it, is even though I am excited about being with family, seeing a lot of people, maybe seeing some people I don't see often, I also kind of dread the fact that I'm not going to have a free weekend until, maybe February. Because that's kind of the way we do. And maybe y'all that are young married couples that haven't really figured out your schedule yet during the holidays, or maybe you have young children where it's even more difficult that every grandparent wants their peace or time with them, you'll kind of get dragged from place to place. This past week for Thanksgiving, I celebrated Thanksgiving 3 times because there were 3 different groups of people that I was expected to celebrate Thanksgiving with. For Christmas, I will be expected to attend 5 different gatherings for Christmas. In my life growing up, I thought there was only one Christmas, and there was only one Thanksgiving. But as you get older, you realize you're going to have to go to this family's Thanksgiving, and you go to this family's Thanksgiving, and then you're supposed to have a Friendsgiving, and it's just a lot, right? And so you don't have a free weekend. And I think a lot of us have experienced that. We know what it's like to be, as Jason said this morning, be at a gathering and want nothing more than to go home because you're just tired of it. You're tired of having to give your time. And if you're like me, this is a struggle, finding time to give your time. And not only that, but you think that there's more important things you could be doing. And we'll even use the argument, or I will maybe, is I can't go to that gathering. I need to work on Bible material. That's more important, right? But actually, if you look at the life of Jesus, Jesus thought that spending time with people and being social, and that's the way I'm defining social today, just spending time with other people, Jesus says that's important. And that's what I wanted to look at, especially as we go into a very busy season where you are going to be tested and pulled to your social limits. And what we'll do is we'll talk about why this is important for a Christian. And then secondly, we'll just look at some events in Jesus' life. And I think we'll get to bring out something interesting about Jesus tonight. The first thing I want to do is ask this question: does a Christian have to be social? Like, do I actually have to go out of my way to spend time with other people, either in the world or even my brethren? In the first century, there was this new belief called asceticism. And what that belief basically was that the way to be more godly was to remove any kind of luxury. You couldn't sleep in a nice bed. You couldn't eat nice things. Some people would physically hurt themselves. A part of asceticism was that you would live as a hermit. And you'd basically go out into the woods, into a cabin, and you would try to live there as long as possible with no social interaction. And that was thought as to be godly. If we read Colossians chapter 2, Paul condemns that practice. And he says, no, God doesn't want you to have false humility, as he calls it. He doesn't want you to practice asceticism. No, he expects you to follow his philosophy and his way of life. Well, this is God's way of life. Very simply in the Sermon on the Mount, what is something or a line that Jesus says that's in the Sermon on the Mount that completely tells you that you have to be some type of social? What about Matthew chapter 5? He says that you are the salt of the earth. You're like a light in a lamp that's under the basket, not on the lampstand, but gives light to all who are in the house. You're like the city on a hill, right? You're supposed to shine your light in the world. And he says in Matthew 5:14 that it's not that you're supposed to get your light and put it under a basket, right? You're supposed to share it. When we go here, we always quickly go to, these talking about when you're at work, you would actually talk about the gospel. And certainly that's true. Or you're at school, you would actually talk about Jesus. But don't you actually have to be out of your environment to shine your light? Can you shine your light at home on the couch watching Netflix? You can't. Because there's no one to shine your light to. And you think about that for just a second. We might not hide our light under a basket, but I do think maybe we're more quick to hide our light under Netflix or underneath the couch or underneath the TV, right? Where we just don't have to interact with anybody. God doesn't give any limits on how much is too much social, how much is little too much social. But he does say it's enough that we can't accomplish the commandments. And certainly we have to be social enough to shine our light in our community, at least to have some kind of interactions with people. I struggle with that. especially being a preacher, there's sometimes only two people I see all day. I see Jason and I see Emily, and that's it sometimes. When I was going to school, I had a way to make contacts with people and try to set up studies. But when I lost that, I've kind of become dependent on y'all to bring me contacts, right? And so there's this element of me that what I want to do is try to find a way to at least put myself some way in the community where I can find opportunities to shine the light of the gospel. And I think I need to do that. I need to take time to at least be that social, right? Does a Christian need to be social? Well, they need to be social enough to know their brethren, right? You have to, or at least you should, try to know your brethren. And that takes time. That takes conversations. That takes just spending something to doing together so we get to know each other. You think about this passage in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8. Paul writes to the Corinthians, not to the 2 Corinthians. He writes to the Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, and he says, "For we do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of our trouble which came to us in Asia." And he says these bad things happened to us, and it was troubling, it was hard. But guess what? You prayed for us. You helped us together in prayer for us, that they may be given by my persons on our behalf for this gift granted to us through many. And so even Paul wanted the brethren in Corinth to know him and to know what's going on in his life and even to know the bad things that are going on in their lives. Do we have to be social with each other to learn those things? Here's a fun one. Can you do this at church during the assembly? Probably not. I mean, unless y'all are talking to each other during services and telling each other what's going on, it's kind of hard to get to know each other in the assembly. You know, I know sometimes we can have a letter read during the assembly to explain what's going on. I think that's a good thing to do. I'm glad when we take the opportunity to do those things. But this is an individual responsibility. This is something that the church can't do for you. This is something that you have to do as an individual church member, is take enough time to get to know your brethren. And that means doing things outside of the congregation. Eating together would be the biggest one we see in the gospel. The brethren are fueled on hospitality, and certainly this is a way that we can show hospitality. One more, and I think really sums this up. Does a Christian have to be social? Well, they need to be social enough that eating or not eating with others actually means something. And I take this from 1 Corinthians chapter 5, that the withdrawal process, when we withhold our social association from somebody, we should have been social enough with them in the first place that it means something when we remove that. Now, just because sometimes it's not always effective, does that mean we shouldn't do it? I think that's something we talked about earlier this year. No, we have to obey God. And just because it doesn't work isn't God's fault. It would be our fault or their fault that they refuse to be social enough that removing eating and drinking would actually do something. You think about 1 Corinthians 5, verse 10. "Yet I certainly did not mean with the sexually immoral people of this world," talking about keeping company with sexually immoral people. He says, no, you'd have to go out of the world to do that, right? No, I expect that you would eat and drink with idolaters and covetous people. Those are the people in the world that you do need to eat and drink with. But he says, "But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone named a brother who is sexually immoral or idolatrous or covetous, not even to eat with such a person," right? There's an expectation here that me spending time with you means something. And when I do choose to spend time with you like someone in the world, I can have an influence on that person. I can affect them in a good way. That's a good thing. That's something that Jesus did. But when something's happened to the point that you've completely rebelled against God, me removing my social association from a brother that's caught up in that would mean something because we were social in the first place. Does a Christian have to be social to some type of degree? We do. The commandments to keep, that we need to keep, some of them command that we're at least some type of social, right? We've got to know people in the world to shine our light, and we have to know our brethren so we can work together in the kingdom. It just has to happen. Now, what's difficult about this is, again, it's an individual responsibility. I can't force you to be social with me. You can't force me to be social with you. We just have to do it. You know what's kind of sad? And I would say this in a Sunday night group, but not in the Sunday morning group, is Sunday morning, when I'm preaching and I'm wrapping up my sermon, there are people that leave this building every time when I'm on my invitation. Number one, it's annoying. And I always want to say something about it, right? I almost want to call them out, but I don't think that's the right thing to do because I don't know what's going on. But there's the same people that leave every time I'm wrapping up my sermon. They used to leave during the invitation song. But I think since our elders have been walking back to the back to try to catch people and greet people as they leave, now they leave during the sermon so they can get away that much faster. Is that not troubling? You know, I think that's at least some type of troubling. How am I supposed to get to know you? And how are you supposed to get to know me if the only thing we do is assemble together with no minutes before or after services? We can't. We can't get to know each other. How am I supposed to help you with your struggles if I don't know who you are? How are you supposed to help me? It's something we have to take individual responsibility for. And again, it's not always easy, and it's not easy for everyone. I certainly think I would rather preach than talk to people as individuals in small groups. When I preach, there's like this little voice that tells me the next thing to say. When I talk to people as one-on-one basis, that small little voice disappears, and I feel like I'm all on my own. It's a little bit more difficult, and maybe you're the same way. That actually talking one-on-one or even small groups is more difficult. But again, I know that we have struggles and we can be sympathetic with those things, but I do believe that we need to work on those things. And the main reason why is because here, right above me, is the name of the most social person that ever existed, Jesus Christ. In every chapter of the gospel, he is with other people or he's in the houses of other people spending time with them. Now, there are times when he withdraws, and we're going to talk about that at the very end. But this is the most social person that there ever was. And I think we can look to him for guidelines on how important and how to conduct ourselves in trying to be social with other people and trying to actually spend quality time with people of the world and also with other disciples, because Jesus, of course, did both. The first thing I want to bring up is the very first miracle of Jesus. Where did that happen at? That happened at a social event. That happened at a wedding, right? Look in John chapter 2. If you remember what happens in John chapter 1, Jesus calls his first disciples together. He meets Nathanael. He tells Nathanael this great line, you're going to see greater things than these. He basically gives the Jacob's ladder thought that you're going to see angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. And when you end chapter 1, guys, you are ready to go. You are ready to start Jesus' ministry. Now is the time. He's been baptized by John. And now he has the power to do miracles. And he's going to go out and he's going to go save the world, right? And that's my attitude when I leave chapter 1. But then I get to chapter 2. Look at verse 1. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. And the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. In my mind, guys, if I was Jesus or maybe Jesus' disciples, and I was all excited about what we were going to do and where we were going to go and who we were going to teach, and I had been invited to a wedding, you know what I would have done? Sorry, I got more important places to be, right? I am too busy for a wedding. Did Jesus say he was too busy to go to the wedding? Certainly he could have been. No, Jesus and the disciples went to the wedding. And what problem gets thrown on his hands? We got nothing to drink. Look at verse 3. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not come. Now he goes ahead and he obeys his mother's request. But you can even see Jesus' attitude about this. This isn't my time. This isn't my place. And yet you want me to make more drinks for everybody, right? And you can kind of see maybe Jesus' frustration. But did he go? Did even Jesus take time to be social in some of these events? What opportunities did it give Jesus because he went to the events? It obviously gave him the opportunity to teach his first disciples who he really is and what he can do. Something good came out of Jesus choosing to be social. If you're reading the New Testament, you'll see that Jesus never really turned down hospitality. And certainly in the scriptures, he could have, times was not recorded, but every time that he's invited to go to someone's house, Jesus does it. He makes time to go to someone's house. Luke 7:33. Jesus is so good at this that actually the Pharisees make fun of him about it. In Luke 7, if you'll turn there with me, this is right after, in Luke's account, where John the Baptist sends word, in Matthew's account to him. In Luke 7, what happens is the centurion servant is healed. There it is. John the Baptist comes to him in verse 19, has this message, right? And then as this happens, it says that Jesus kind of gets upset with the people, and he's going to compare himself to John the Baptist in verse 33. He says, "For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you say he has a demon. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look, a glutton and a winebibber, and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is justified by all her children." He's obviously upset, and his argument, of course, is John the Baptist did one way, and you hated him for it, and I did a different way, and you hate me too. There's no helping you in this situation. But notice here, even though this was wrong, that Jesus was not a glutton, and he wasn't a drinker, what did his enemies accuse him of being? A glutton and a drinker. Why would his enemies accuse Jesus of being a glutton and a drinker? When they saw him, every time they saw him, what was he doing? He was sitting and eating with people, right? That even fits the next verse. Look at verse 36. Then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went to the Pharisee's house and he sat down to eat, right? He's going to eat with the Pharisees. He's going to eat with the tax collectors on the last week of his life, like Zacchaeus. He's going to eat with everybody that invites him to eat, isn't he? Why? Because he's the great physician. And he knows he can be an influential help to these people. And so he takes every opportunity that he gets, right? One thing before we leave this, can you go to eat with everyone who invites you to eat? And I know we've talked about 1 Corinthians 5 in that situation. I'm not talking about that situation. I'm just talking about time management-wise. Do you have the opportunity to eat with everyone who invites you? Sometimes you can't, can you? Right? You just don't have the time. When you invite me to come and eat with you, I love it. It makes me feel good. But sometimes me, and I know Jason talks about it too, we have to say no. We don't have a chance to eat with you this weekend, or we can't meet with you today. And that's not because we don't like you or we don't want to spend time with you. That's just simply because you're the fourth person maybe that's asked today, right? And it's almost like y'all get together and y'all all ask me on the same day. I don't know if y'all planned that ahead of time. But I always feel bad, right? I'm like, no, I can't. I'm already going to someone else's house, right? So are there times when we have to be like, no, I can't? Certainly we do, right? But at the same time, we can work hard and see those events as something important and something that we can make time for when we really have the opportunity to. Certainly Jesus did. Jesus was so social that he had a difficult time turning away the Gentiles, the group of people that he was supposed to wait before he taught the gospel to. Look at John chapter 12 with me. All of our readings here should be in these 4 books. It shouldn't be too hard to turn there and read it. John 12:20. This is the famous, "Sir, we would see Jesus" line. Verse 20 says, "Now there were certain Greeks among those who came up to worship at the feast. Then they came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and asked him, saying, 'Sir, we would wish to see Jesus.' Philip came and told Andrew, and in turn Andrew and Philip told Jesus. But Jesus answered them, saying, 'The hour has come that the Son of Man should be glorified. Most surely I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much grain.'" And he goes on to explain that you're going to have to love your life. If you love your life, you're going to lose it. And got the expectation of a discipleship, ultimately talking about his own death there. But you can see his answer to these people. The hour has come that the Son of Man should be glorified, right? And what's interesting about this passage is he doesn't tell us whether he met the Greeks or not. But you can see and understand even the disciples worry, like, do you have time to meet these people? He knows eventually he will through the gospel, but he's worried about it, right? Another reason why I wanted to go to this passage is notice what the Greeks do to get to Jesus. Did they go straight to Jesus? No, they go through Philip, and then Philip goes and asks Andrew, and then Andrew asks Jesus, right? And remember that as we bring that up just a second. Matthew 15 is an example of when Jesus gives in, and he talks to a Gentile. Matthew 15, you're probably familiar with this passage. It's when the woman whose daughter is demon-possessed comes and shouts at Jesus, basically, "I need your help." And Jesus knowing that it wasn't the time for the Gentiles to come yet, tried to send her away, but simply he could not because of his compassion. It says in verse 22 of Matthew 15, and behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed. But he answered her not a word, and his disciples came and urged him, saying, send her away, for she cries out after us. But he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. They have some more correspondence, but then in verse 28, he says, O woman, great is your faith. Let it be done as you desire. Because simply, even though Jesus wasn't supposed to meet these people yet, he just couldn't help it. He could not have compassion on people. He had a hard time walking away from people that were looking for help, right? Is that the type of person that we are? Are we the type of person that when people come to us and they want to talk to us about their concerns, are we the type of person that tries to get away from that conversation? Or a person that's just so compassionate and so sympathetic, we can't help but help other people? Certainly this is what our master teacher has. But I think, again, what are we competing with? I don't want to stay here and talk to you about your problems. I want to go home and crash on the couch. And we're literally trying to choose the couch over helping people in the world or hearing conversations of our brethren in need. Jesus wouldn't like that at all. And is certainly the complete opposite of the type of person that he is. Staying here in this section in Matthew 15, I want us to also realize as we go through this especially, that Jesus had a difficult time with crowds. We can't just throw this sermon away and say, well, Jesus was perfect. He was the master teacher. He was great being social around people. No, Jesus was given a lot of challenges when he had humbled himself to be a man on this earth. And one of those challenges was Jesus was always dealing with crowds. Every time he thought he was going to get to sit down and take a break, the crowd changed his mind about it. In Matthew 14, let's skim through this chapter. Here's a great example of this. In Matthew 14, looking in verse 13, Jesus hears that John the Baptist is dead. And he's upset about that, so he tries to get away. Verse 13, when Jesus heard it, he departed from there by boat to a deserted place by himself. And when the multitudes heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. And then Jesus went and saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and he healed their sick. What is Jesus trying to do in verse 13? He's upset. His cousin is dead, or his relative is dead. He's trying to get out of here. But the people follow him. He sees them. He's moved with compassion, and he heals their sick. He's actually trying to get away from these people, but they follow him. Evening comes in verse 15. The disciples say, Jesus, send these people away. He says, no, let's feed them instead. And he does the miracle of feeding the 5,000. Looking at verse 22, the feeding is over, and it says this. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. We're going to talk about verse 23 at the end, that he went off to pray. But he sends them away. He sends the disciples on the boat, and it's kind of a trick play. And he goes up the mountain to be by himself. Later that night, as you know, there's a storm. Jesus walks out on the water to meet the disciples because they're afraid. Peter says he wants to walk out to meet him. He almost drowns. It's been a long day, hasn't it? I mean, we at the beginning was because John the Baptist was dead. We were trying to get away. But instead, in the evening, we fed all these people. We've gone and prayed by ourselves. Now we've walked on water. We've saved Peter's life. All right? Has it been a long day? It's been a long day. As we get here to verse 35, we finally get to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, to Gennesaret. When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret. If this was you, what do you want to do in the land of Gennesaret? After you've walked across the whole Sea of Galilee, that's a long walk. I want to watch Netflix. I want to crash. Did Jesus get a chance to crash? Look at verse 35. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent out into all the surrounding region, brought to him all who were sick, and begged him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched it were made perfectly well. Here's the compassion of Jesus. He's been awake for over 24 hours as far as we know. He's had all these things happen. He finally thinks he's going to get to take a break. But no, the people find him. The crowds was a hard time for Jesus, but for some reason, he always found the strength. Well, we know the reason, that he always found the strength to spend time with people that were looking to spend time with Jesus. By the way, as all these things are going on in Jesus' life, and he's having all these people looking to him for help, and it's even become a difficulty, what else is happening while all that's happening? Well, it seems like everywhere he goes, the Pharisees find him and try to test him, right? Even though all these things are going on, the Pharisees are constantly finding him and testing him. And if you look in verse 1 in chapter 15, that's what happened next. If there were men that walked around Gardendale that just their whole job and purpose was to follow me around and catch me slipping up, do you think I would leave my house? Y'all, I would stay in the house. I may not even come to the building because I'm terrified of these people that are just following me around trying to catch me, slip me up. And on top of this, with the crowds and the getting no sleep and the working hard every day, Jesus is doing a lot just taking the time to get out of the house and to be social and to share the gospel. And Jesus does it. With even all of this going on, Jesus still found time to even visit with little children, didn't he? This will be our last one for kind of this context. But look at Matthew 19 with me. There's a reason why I wanted us to read John 12 and that the Greeks first came to Philip and Andrew. If you look at Matthew 19:13, Jesus obviously has a lot of people coming to him again. And in 19:13 it says, then little children were brought to him, and he might put his hands on them and pray, but the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. And he laid his hands on them and departed from there. Jesus obviously makes a lesson out of this. But this is what I want to do first. I'm usually quick to demonize the disciples for what they did here. That these mothers and fathers came up with these little children, and they said, we like for Jesus to pray for our children. And those disciples were like, get those little kids out of here. That's how we teach that story. Get them little kids out of here, right? Jesus didn't have time for little kids. But you also think about it like this of what we've seen. Jesus is having a hard time dealing with the crowds. It's become difficult for him to move and to go from city to city. He's obviously got who becomes the apostles have kind of turned into his handlers. They help people get to Jesus. They help also get people away from Jesus so Jesus can take a break, right? If you've noticed this, famous people actually have handlers that walk with them to try to get them to move along and to help them greet people, right? I don't want to compare Jesus to a politician, but if you've noticed, politicians have handlers to help them greet a lot of people. I'll compare him to somebody better than a politician. Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was so good at greeting people on the street that they had to hire him a handler. And his job was to go with Mr. Rogers and to help him go from one person to the next person and even tell Mr. Rogers, okay, it's time to go. You have to stop visiting people, right? Well, famous and important people have handlers to help them greet people. You can think of yourself as a disciple right here in verse 13. Jesus is healing lepers, all right? He's healing people that are very sick. He's doing a lot of important teaching. And all of a sudden, you have these people come up and say, I want Jesus to pray for my kid. I would be like, okay, look, unless your kid is very sick, you need to go. We don't have time for this, right? And maybe that's what was happening here, was they simply were trying to help Jesus consolidate his time that day. But what does Jesus say instead? He says, let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Number one, anyone can come and be a part of the kingdom of heaven, and that's the message here. Don't forbid anyone from coming. But also number two, it's important to allow little children to learn about Jesus, isn't it? And they are allowed and welcome to learn about Jesus. And you know what? That takes us to be social with little children. We have to be the type of people that are approachable by children, that they feel like they can come and talk to us when they need help. And they can come and talk to us about questions about Jesus. Because certainly Jesus took time to be social with them. Just to wrap this thought up, was Jesus a social person? Jesus was a very social person. And he used a lot of energy to spend time with as much people as he possibly could. And I think, too, of course, this is something that we might have to work at, but we, too, can be the type of people that at least try to be out there, that people know that we're approachable, that we're eager to spend time with people, to help people, and to be an influence on other people. Jesus was social. Yet, he always knew, however, when it was time to get away, didn't he? Jesus was very social, but he knew when it was time to take a break. Let's look at Mark chapter 1. Mark is a book that is full of little things about Jesus, when he got hungry, when he couldn't get into a city because there were so many crowds, when he tried to tell people, please don't tell people about me, but they did anyway, and he had to deal with another large crowd. This is one of early Jesus' works in Capernaum. Verse 32, it says, in the evening when the sun had set, they brought to him all who were sick and all those who were demon-possessed. And the whole city was gathered together at the door. Don't read over that verse real fast and keep on going to the next one. The whole city was gathered together where? At the door of Peter and Andrew's little house, all looking to be with Jesus. Verse 35, now in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he went out and departed to the solitary place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. When they found him, they said to him, everyone is looking for you. If Jesus was sarcastic, which he wasn't, I think he would have said to that, I know they're looking for me. That's why I'm here, right? Jesus knew when it was time, after evening began and the sun set and all the people in the town are at the front door trying to be healed by Jesus, he knew when it was time to go get some sleep and then to leave and go find a solitary place to recharge, right? There is some wisdom in stepping back and recharging, right? We're going to talk in just a second about what the recharging is. That's very important here. But I do want to make this point. At least with my short experience with Gardendale, with our group, and I'm sure most groups are like this, we kind of end up in these situations where you've got one group of people that do it all, and one group of people that it's hard to get them to do anything. And now what I'm doing is I'm talking to the people that do it all. And if you are one of the people that do it all, you probably know you do a lot, whether it be with the work here or whether it be as an individual. If you do a lot, it is okay to take a break. It is okay to tell people, no, I can't come to your house tonight. I got to spend some time with my family, right? It's okay to say, I can't do that job right now, but please let me help you find someone who can do that job right now, right? If you need to take a break, it is okay to say that, right? Especially when you're someone who knows is doing a lot, and sometimes that can open up opportunities for others to do things, right? And to fill those roles. When Jesus went to go recharge, did he go watch Netflix? That's what we would do, right? We would say, I need to take a break. I'm going to go sit on the couch and watch TV. I need to take a break. I'm going to go lay down and play on my phone. I'm going to take a break. Jesus certainly went to bed that night, but what did Jesus do to recharge? Jesus prayed, right? Why did Jesus recharge by praying? Because praying is actually the only way that we can truly recharge. Because being social with each other is great. I love being social with y'all. I have fun with y'all, all right? I don't have fun with everybody, but I do have fun with y'all, right? But also spending time with us takes a lot of energy. It can wear you out. It can burn you out. But when you spend time with God in prayer, does it wear you out? Does it burn you out? For me, prayer has never worn me out or burned me out. Actually, it helped me recharge and made me think about what else I can do to help the work or to spend time and be influential to other people about the gospel. Jesus certainly knew when it was time to recharge, but if we keep on reading, he also knew when it was time to jump right back in. After Simon says, everyone is looking for you in verse 37, verse 30 he said, But he said to them, let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also, because for this purpose I have come forth. And he was preaching in their synagogues throughout all Galilee and casting out demons. I think there's a powerful lesson here, especially at this very last reading. When we struggle spending time with other people, we struggle spending time with other people in the world, maybe struggle spending time with other people at church, maybe the problem is our motivation. If we're just being social for the sake of being social, I can see how that would be very tiring very quick. If we're just being social for the sake of fun, I can see how that can become very tiring very quick. But if we're social for Jesus' purpose of being social, let us go out to the other cities and synagogue because I have to tell more people about the gospel. Do you think you'll burn out fast on that? No, because now you have a purpose. And now you have a mission. And you have a purpose now to get off the couch and to go find people to talk to about so you can share the light of the gospel. And what a great purpose to have. And honestly, I think that's probably what all of us are looking for. We are just looking for purpose. Here's the best perfect purpose we can have. Thank you for your attention. And if anything, I know it's a challenge. I know it's not something that will happen overnight, and it's going to look different for different people. But I do certainly believe that we do have to sometimes get out of our comfort zones so we can be a good influence on others. If anything else, I think we learned something about Jesus. That Jesus worked very hard the 3 years that we have him working in his ministry, recorded in the scriptures, just to bring people the gospel and to preach the truth and the love of the coming kingdom. Is there anyone here that needs to hear that needs to hear the urgency of Jesus for you to be part of his kingdom? That's a very special thing, isn't it? Not to dive into too many details, but especially thinking about the passages we've read today in Matthew about the little children coming to him in chapter 19. Today, me and Jason had a Bible study with an entire family because an 8-year-old visited with us this morning, and he went and told his family about what he had learned here at worship. And that got them interested, and that got them to come and meet us, and we were trying to set up a Bible study, and we've done that. That's very exciting. And that was done because an 8-year-old knew enough that at least to say, this is important, right? There's some of us here today that are much older than 8 years old, and I'm wondering if you have the same zeal. I know you can. Maybe you just need a little help. And that's what we're offering right now. If there's anyone here that is ready to be saved and put on Jesus through the waters of baptism, why don't you come forward as we stand and sing?